you're at work and maybe there's a system issue. Maybe there's something that seems not fair, not appropriate. There's something systemic and you're scared to speak up about it.
Just because you're grateful for your job, it doesn't mean that you should be giving away all of your basic rights in the situation.
Nobody's going to tell you this because it serves the hospital. It might serve senior people. It might make their life easier for you not to know how valuable you actually are. I didn't become that empowered for many years. I was thinking, oh, there could be total consequences for me of speaking up in this moment or not doing what I'm told. And I could have easily fallen into the pattern of just accepting whatever was thrown my way.
I had a misunderstanding because these things were happening around me in the workplace here, for example, that they were acceptable.
we're going to get sacked. Unlikely from just advocating for yourself. You might get a no.
And that misunderstanding that what is normal is acceptable. So what will be normal to you is people not reinforcing that you are valuable.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Doctor Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. Hello again, our beautiful friends, our Doctor Humans. Welcome back to the poddy, and today's episode, which is said to be a spicy one. It's one of my favourite topics. I'm so passionate about it, and this one's going to come straight from my soul. And what we're talking about today is something that nobody will ever tell you, and that is that you, yes, you are extremely valuable. And we're going to talk about some ways that this might be showing up for you and how it might be getting in your way. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you're going to feel so empowered to walk into any situation in the clinical environment, understanding just how valuable you are. I'm so excited for this today.
Me too. If I could put something on a billboard, it would be this: you are valuable, except I wouldn't, because it's actually so hard to really grasp what that means. And that's why I'm so glad you're bringing this to us today, Kristeen, because you've got tangible scenarios that are clinical scenarios to help you see, if I was somebody who did value myself, what would my behavior be like? How would I show up in this situation? Versus, the kind of concept of value yourself and everybody's important and have self-respect. It's hard to know if you're doing it unless you really start to contrast that concept, those thoughts about yourself with the way that you're actually behaving. So as you're listening to Kristeen's scenarios today, check in with, who are you right now in life in these scenarios? How do you behave? How do you show up in these scenarios right now? And then Kristeen's also going to lead you to the different options that show you how somebody who does value themselves shows up.
So many scenarios. And I'm pretty sure I've been in every single one. So I guess, just dropping yourself in, no matter what level of training you're at, I want you to drop yourself into these situations where you're at work and maybe there's a system issue. Maybe there's something that seems not fair, not appropriate. Maybe you're working a lot of overtime and that is of no fault of your own. And you're quite worried about how it might be if you start to put boundaries in place or suggest changes to the system that might let you leave on time. Or maybe there's some cultural issues with your co-registrars where they're not leaving on time, they're not taking a half day, so then you're also not doing that. And other things in your cell environment are affecting your behaviour. There might be scenarios where your roster is just not right at all. It's not fair. Maybe it's not legal, something like that. But you're scared to speak up. There's something systemic and you're scared to speak up about it. The other scenario is with colleagues, especially more senior colleagues. Is there a nurse in charge or a consultant or manager, someone who's your boss, I guess, or in a leadership position who might not be carrying themselves very well and it's negatively impacting on you? How empowered do you feel to speak to them, speak to their manager, get that situation sorted for yourself, right? And I feel like there's countless scenarios where these sort of concepts apply. But I can certainly think of scenarios in my own training where I really did not feel empowered. And we can come on to that in a second. But the goal here is really, and the reason I'm so passionate about this is now that I'm in more of a leadership role, I have trainees that I work with all the time. And it just breaks my heart to watch them in these scenarios where they have no idea how valuable they actually are. Because the truth is that nobody's going to tell you this because it serves the hospital, it might serve senior people, it might make their life easier for you not to know how valuable you actually are in the clinical environment. And so no one's going to try to lift you up. But what we want to do today is really help you to see how valuable you are so that when you come to any of those scenarios, you can be speaking from a place of not arrogance, not entitlement, but just not feeling like, you're sort of disposable or insignificant and you should just be quiet either, so that really is our goal today.
And I think it's easy for us to get confused as doctors because we are so grateful to be doing the work that we're doing. We're grateful to have the jobs that we have. And especially if you're not well established, and I'm talking about being like 20 years senior established in your job, your role, and you've made a massive contribution, it's easy for you to stay in that mindset of, I'm just so grateful and so lucky to be in this position doing the work that I'm doing, especially when I know that so many other people would want to be in my position as well. And we want you to keep that beautiful mindset. But that doesn't mean just because you're grateful for your job and just because you feel lucky to be in it, it doesn't mean that you should be giving away all of your basic rights in the situation, or that you should let other people treat you in any which way that they feel is honestly most convenient for them at that moment. So I do think this is a really important topic for us to slow down on and really use Kristeen's scenarios here to recognize, am I showing up as somebody who values myself, or am I showing up as somebody who basically will tolerate anything, whatever gets thrown at me, even when I kind of sort of know it's actually not okay to be treated that way, but I'm going to tolerate it because I love my job. You don't have to pick either side here. There's this middle ground that we want to bring to you today. So Kristeen, you had a great story that makes this really clear from actually back when you're in training.
And I think this is so great because my co-registrar was so empowered and I was so disempowered. So it gives that lovely contrast. So back I was a first year trainee in nephrology training, and that's already hard, that's already a challenging thing to be happening to you. And then I had a colleague who became unwell and had to be off work for several months. And it was obvious when they went on sick leave that they'd be away for a long time. And the expectation, the automatic default, we were taken into a room and the consultants involved were like, oh, so basically you're just going to have to do this person's job. That was kind of the expectation. And I was obviously thinking, well, that sounds awful, but I didn't feel empowered to challenge it in any way. I was just thinking, oh, well, if they're telling me that's what we're doing, that must be what we're doing. But my more senior registrar was like, nah, as a hospital, you need to fix this. You need to get cover for this. We are not going to be doing that. Like me and her, we're not going to be doing that. And this is not our problem, basically. And she said it in a really nice way, in a way that was well received. But I was quite fascinated by her approach, but clearly she felt valuable enough. Like she wasn't worried about references. She wasn't worried about her career progression. She wasn't worried about really what anyone thought of this, because she felt very justified in the fact that, yes, she had an inherent value, and she also knows how the hospital works, and she also knows how her contract works. And she was just very, very much empowered. And it's the way that I would like to see my registrars showing up to work, is feeling that empowered. But I don't think it happens naturally for most of us. Whereas I was, until I seen that example, and even years later, I didn't become that empowered for many years. But at that time, I was definitely that person. I was thinking, oh, there could be total consequences for me of speaking up in this moment or not doing what I'm told. And I could have easily fallen into the pattern of just accepting whatever was thrown my way. So it's such a great example. And really, I guess what I'd love everyone listening to do is sort of yeah, like you say, Beck, which one are you? Like, are you are you me? Are you my co-reg? As we dive into more of this episode, you'll start to become more like the empowered registrar or whatever level of training that you're at.
Part of it is mindset, but part of it is, as you say, actually understanding what your rights are. And I have to say, it was only into my 20s that I started to understand what my rights are, as a human, just understanding the Charter of Human Rights, but also, within that professional work setting, you do actually have rights. There are actually standards. And for a lot of us, I don't think we know what they are. And a part of the reason why I didn't know what my human rights were or my professional rights were in that setting was because I saw so many examples in my life growing up and experienced so many examples in my life and in the workplace as well that weren't actually reflective of that standard. For me, I had a misunderstanding, this was just subconscious, that because these things were happening around me in the workplace here, for example, that they were acceptable. So watch out if you've fallen into that trap too, and instead recognize there are actually this set of, let's just call them rights, standards for you as a doctor that you might not be aware of, and you might find that you're not actually meeting those standards because you're just assuming that whatever happens around you is acceptable because it's normal. But actually, if you go and, like Kristeen's co-reg, actually start to understand, oh no, this is actually the hospital's responsibility here. That's a significant part of your empowerment. That in itself is an act of self-value, right? You're not going to do that if you don't value yourself enough to say, hey, just because this is normal doesn't mean I'm going to accept it. I am somebody who values myself enough to go and make sure that we have the best working environment for me, just for me as somebody who is valuable. And then the other aspect is the mindset. When I say mindset here, what I'm really thinking of is being that person who is courageous and brave enough to actually stand up and say, I matter. Yeah, everything going around me here is hard and complicated, and just me asking to have this standard met rocks the boat, essentially. But the mindset is, I value myself enough to rock the boat. Right? Don't expect that you're not going to rock the boat. But with this episode, we want you to recognize that value that you have is actually worth paying that price for. Respecting the value of yourself is worth rocking the boat for.
What is so interesting, right, is yes, you should value yourself enough to rock the boat. But the truth is, this is the truth, is the boat's not going to rock as much as you think it is, right? You challenging these narratives that are often quite ridiculous. Can you hear the passion in my actual voice? It's not going to rock the boat that much. If you said to me, or a completely reasonable person, that actually these are my contracted hours, so these are the ones that I'm going to be aiming to work, I'm going to be like, fair play to you, high five, that sounds reasonable. Or actually, I don't want to pick up the sick leave for this person, I've got enough on my plate. Completely reasonable approach, And so the things that you're worried about, I guess, unless there's a pathological person in your workplace, which is not what we're talking about today, not the kind of pathological bullying phenomenon, that is not what we're talking about. But if you've got a situation that you're trying to advocate for yourself and resolve, like understanding that actually you do matter. And the truth is that you turning up to work, if you're good at your job, you turning up to work has an incredible impact on everyone around you. They want you there. They want you doing your job to the best of your ability. And if you're not there, there are other people and systems that suffer. And so you're valuable in that way, irrespective of the rest of your sort of construct and the rest of your facets and how you see yourself, right? Just if you think about it like that, what would happen if you didn't turn up to work? So it's actually within their interest to keep you happy and to keep you at work, right? So let's be honest about that. But also that rocking the boat phenomenon, the things we're worried about, the bad reference, I don't know, what else do we think is going to happen? I don't know what else could happen. Like we're going to get sacked. Unlikely from just advocating for yourself. You might get a no. You might get a, that's not how we're going to operate around here. And then you get to make choices. But rocking the boat and the things we fear, they actually often aren't even true consequences to this sort of polite and respectful self-advocacy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just a really great exercise to do, to actually ask that question. You're like, wait a second, what are we so worried about happening here? Something that comes up with my clients is usually that you'll kind of end up with this, somebody will get a negative bias towards you and they'll start treating you differently each day. When you start to spell it out like that, you're like, oh, wait a second, well, that's something that can be managed as well. That's not an irreversible or definitely particularly harmful thing. Actually, I can also now step up and build my own emotional resilience to deal with somebody who's giving me the cold shoulder or who's preferencing somebody over me for some small, reasonably insignificant thing. These are things that, when we're looking at them from a distance and we're not being really clear about the scenarios, it can feel really scary. And social rejection, social unease can feel absolutely awful in your body. But working out what is just an awful feeling versus an actual awful and unmanageable, particularly disadvantaging situation is a really helpful exercise that you can do to get to that place that Kristeen's at right now, when she's facilitated so many of her colleagues through these scenarios, to be in that mindset that she's got, which is just, what are you talking about? Nothing is more important than you being self-respectful here, than you actually valuing yourself and acting like you value yourself to be able to be in the working environment that you deserve. Nothing is more threatening than that is important. So I hope that her enthusiasm here is just like contagious.
But also that is true, right? In everything we do, if we value and respect ourselves, we'll teach other people how to treat us. And so sometimes if someone is, even if it's inconvenient, their opinion's inconvenient, the way they're showing up is inconvenient because they are valuing themselves, it might be inconvenient to myself or the hospital system or whatever it is, the scenario you're in, but I'm going to develop a respect for that person. I'm going to respect the fact that they did stand up for themselves. And I think most people can reach that respect, even if there's a disagreement. So by advocating for yourself, you actually might promote yourself in certain circles as well. So yeah, just another thing to add there. So I hope this has installed a new sense of self-value if you, especially past Kristeen, struggle with this. For anyone who is in my immediate environment, my registrars, my residents, you will know that I'm always telling you about this. And I would encourage each of us to tell each other about this, your peers, your colleagues, like remind each other when something hard comes up, how valuable we are. And I guess have that strength to have the conversation with a colleague or a supervisor, whoever it's going to be, to try and change those conditions for yourself, make things right, make work more enjoyable for yourself, whatever the scenario is, because you absolutely matter. And yeah, never forget that.
Couldn't agree more. The frame that Kristeen offered was, just because what you see around you creates the sense of what is normal, it doesn't mean it is what you should accept. The problem is the fact that something is normal. It makes us feel like it is something that we should accept. The fact that it occurs on a day-to-day basis, that it's familiar, that it's common, makes us think it is right or correct or acceptable. But you got to break that little misassociation, that misunderstanding that what is normal is acceptable. And as Kristeen said, the key here is there aren't many people in the world who are going to be like Kristeen and tell you this. So what will be normal to you is people not reinforcing that you are valuable. There's no incentive for people in the hospital system to do that for you, right? The people who run the system, because they want to get more and more and more out of you, not from necessarily a malicious place, but because the system is in desperate need of more resources, right? So just because it's not normal for you to hear, it hasn't felt normal to you to think that you're valuable, doesn't mean you aren't. Don't wait for somebody else in your sphere even to tell you it. Take Kristeen's word for it and run. Thank you guys so much for watching this week. We love joining in with you in this time, and we love the idea that by listening to this podcast, you're becoming more aware of just how valuable you are. So see you guys very soon.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up